Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Parker. So Parker, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
How's it going? My name is Parker Witte. So I live in Austin, Texas currently. I'm the owner and founder of Perfect Energy. We're a natural energy drink and supplement company bringing better energy to the people.
So how did you kind of get the idea for this brand?
Yeah, so this actually started in my childhood. So my mother was actually a Ironman distance athlete as I was growing up. As you can imagine, the supplements that you have to take whenever you're doing things like distance running is pretty substantial. So from a young age, I was exposed to glutamine, thiamine, everything you could name. And I was constantly wondering, can I have one? Can I have one? Well, no, this is for this reason. You don't need it yet. And so that kind of got the wheels turning. My brother and I were also athletes. And so growing up, we were always focused on what can we take to improve our body's performance. So that kind of cascaded to just a greater interest that grew over the years to the point where flash forward, Corbin and I are living with each other post-college. He went to Texas A&M. I was at UT in Austin, and I had him move in with me. Our living room looked like an industrial lab, warehousing units. We had full industrial shelves. We had gas masks. We had giant mixing vats and a lot of industrial equipment to functionally make our own supplements. We were encapsulating things. We were making powdered sleep blends. We were making energy blends. We were making performance blends. You name it, we were making it. We were sourcing ingredients from around the world. And so, that kind of turned into, let's can our drink. And then, hey, I want one. Hey, we should probably sell this to someone. Hey, maybe we sell this to a market in town. Okay, what if we just try to sell this in every grocery store in the US? So that brings us to where we are today.
That's awesome. So can you just talk more about your drink? I mean, obviously there is
Yeah.
many drinks out there. There's a lot of competition, but what kind of separates your drink from the competition out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, really what makes a standout drink is quality of ingredients, and it's also the actual things inside of it. So that's kind of what we look at. You see a lot of the same buzzwords. You see functional, you see nootropic, you see, lasting energy, no jitters, no crash. There's a lot of things that are flying around. And so as a consumer, it's very challenging to look at those things and think, well, what's real? What's not real? What's actually going to have an effect on my body and mind? What's not going to have an effect? Maybe it has the ingredient that is going to have an effect on me, but it's not at the right dose. And so when you look at all these factors, I think your head can spin a lot because not everyone's has a PhD and understands supplementation and what it does to your body. So we try to do that work for y'all. We tested a lot of supplements on ourselves. We had a lot of guinea pigs, which were also our friends at the time, to take our supplements and say, what's going to be the most effective? What is something that you're actually going to experience a benefit from? That's not just hey, cross your fingers, maybe you'll feel this in 3 to 9 months if you're sleeping 9 hours a night and eating all organic. It's like, no, you're going to feel our drink right when you drink it. So we're the combination of matcha green tea for our caffeine source. We have L-theanine at a dose of 220 milligrams, and we have cordyceps extract. So each of these ingredients individually are going to have an effect on your body, stimulating, slightly relaxing with theta wave production from our L-theanine, and then you have also energy production from cordyceps. That's great, but when you combine those three, we found that it gave a really great user experience, and that's been validated time and time again by the people that drink our drink saying, wow, I actually feel substantially different from whenever I drink a Monster or another organic drink. And so really what makes our drink stand apart is the effect. But to get a little more granular, that's what ingredients are actually causing that effect.
So in terms of getting the word out there, obviously you said that you started more so just, handing it out to friends and farmers markets. Has that kind of been your main strategy still today, or are you kind of more focused on retail, online? And what has been kind of your biggest strategy here in 2025?
Yeah, so really, really great point. I mean, we started kind of backwards. I think a lot of people 2020 and beyond are like, let's go online. We've said, let's try to sell it in grocery stores and, take on a lot of buyers. Thankfully, my brother and I are both in sales, so we have zero shame. So we were just knocking on grocery chain doors. We were walking into refrigerator cooler sections of grocery chains saying, hey, is the buyer here? Can we talk to someone? We got told to leave. We had quite a few like borderline trespassing charges against us, but we kept it kosher and we moved on. And so our strategy at the beginning was all retail. We were like, let's take on grocery stores, let's actually sell on the shelves and see if this is possible. Turns out it is possible. It's just very challenging, but we are so entrenched in that we've actually seen some successes. So we actually see most of our sales from our bulk production wise is going to be from our technology companies. So food service. So think Google, Meta, LinkedIn, Oracle offices. Here you can find our beverages. Those people are drinking them like crazy, as you can imagine. Higher stress jobs, larger tech companies, anything that can give a cognitive edge and cognitive boost is going to be resonating a lot. And we found that really the drinks we're up against in those markets are Red Bulls, Celsius, which are fine products. We just have an edge on them from a cognitive enhancing standpoint. So we said, let's go all in retail. We actually just launched with KeHE, our national distributor, in a big handful of states in all four corners of the US. This was about 4 weeks ago. And then we've been picking up steam with those grocery chains and plan to launch in about 20 more states by the end of the year.
That's awesome. And so in terms of like being in the store, obviously like is one thing, but in terms of like getting sales, in grocery, do you guys have like a big strategy in terms of sampling and demos and things like that?
Yeah, so pretty straightforward sampling strategy, which is, have a promotion whenever you get into the grocery store, then have people there sampling your product. So, when someone tries your product, especially something like an energy drink, that's most of the time an impulse buy. I would like to think everyone's going to the grocery store thinking, I'm going to go get a perfect energy drink. The truth is, it's not happening. You see the fancy colors and you see the cursive writing, you say, that looks pretty sexy. I'm going to drink that. Seems like it'll have a good effect on me. So, again, those, frontline buyers who are really just scanning the shelves. If they've already had it from, someone sampling our drink that's charismatic, that's saying, hey, you should try this. We're going to see a lot of success from there. There's a lot of different strategies from like a grocery standpoint, but tried and true, everyone in beverage agrees like that is the most effective. Get someone to try your drink. The chances of them trying it again is very high.
So when you're in grocery, do you typically just sell like one can at a time, or do you sell like packs of like a certain amount? What does that look like?
Yeah, so they are single serve. So we're in the refrigerated section of every grocery store. We don't have split packs. So yeah, you usually see one. We've noticed a buyer trend of most people trying both flavors. So we get a lot of people that buy, for their week at a time, but they're buying all single cans. They're just shoveling them in the cart.
So do you view your product as also play for like, convenience stores like 7-Elevens, places like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Any place where ready to drink is happening and people are buying, kind of on a whim and not planned is going to be where our drink is successful, which then funnels into our website.
So in terms of like packaging, right? Because you briefly touched on that, but obviously that's important, right? When they're going to check out, they're seeing your packaging. What did that kind of process look like for you to have good packaging to really kind of stand out when someone's checking out so they can go and grab a can when they're on their way?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's a $1 billion question. A lot of drinks companies like look into packaging and spend a lot of money and effort. We'll call it the low budget approach, where we took printouts of our drink before we could even afford to sleeve them. And we went and we duct taped them onto a shelf. And then we stood 10 feet back and we said, not bold enough. Let's reprint it. Not bold enough, make the colors brighter. And we got to the point where we iterated, working with ourselves and a designer to actually get, the baseline design down. But as far as what colors do we go with, we need to make this font larger or smaller. We just stood there at the shelves and made it work. And it actually turned out to be really great. And, so talk about a startup, way of doing things. That's, if I've ever seen one, that's it.
So in terms of your current distribution, like you said that you're kind of like all around the US now. So can you kind of talk about those markets? Are you more in just like, natural grocers like the Whole Foods, or just like the local chains like the Kroger's? Like what does that kind of look like for you?
Totally. Yeah. So we've attacked definitely the more natural grocery chain stores. So Sprouts, we have coming up later in this year. Right now, we're in a lot of the local natural grocery stores. So think like Fresh Plus here in Austin, or think like Gelson's in California. So, the smaller niche grocery stores that have a more natural offering section, our drink is generally going to perform well in. But in some of those larger chains, if they do have a natural section, we're going to perform better in those. People that are actually seeking out the better for you section in a grocery store, but also want an energy drink, it kind of funnels them directly to, which thankfully in the last 3 or 4 years has become somewhat standard in grocery stores to have a section for that.
Right. And then in terms of your online channel, like you mentioned, it's not been like a big focus, but are you looking to focus on like Amazon or direct to consumer coming up here as well? Or are you really just like locked in and focus on grocery for the time being?
Yeah, do you mind re-asking the question? I'm not
So in
sure.
terms of like your focus, right? Because you were saying
Yeah,
that like you're not really like you haven't really been focused at all on
sure.
D2C, and like a lot of beverage companies started, during COVID, even after COVID, had this strong focus on D2C, right? That was their core focus. And for
Totally.
you guys had the opposite approach, right? Because at the end of the day, 85% of consumers are still buying products in stores. I mean, so obviously that can make sense. But in terms of your other channels, right, like direct to consumer, Amazon, is that something that you're looking at all here in 2025? Or are you kind
Yeah.
of thinking about maybe like still putting it like in the back burner until you get more distribution across grocery like here in the US?
Yeah, so this is actually right. I mean, getting into KeHE and getting a bigger footprint, this is actually like right in line with where we are from we're shifting our focus to we should start thinking online. We should start thinking direct to consumer. We're in front of enough eyes to where it would start making sense to funnel them from the grocery stores to our website to purchasing our product in bulk and getting better pricing, et cetera. So the shift is happening, actually as we speak.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think it's like especially for your kind of product, if people are drinking it every day, they might want to stock up and subscribe and just
Sure.
get it shipped to their doors, especially for that kind of convenience factor.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, I've had quite a few people ask me, why don't you sell this on Amazon? And truthfully, it's because I don't know Amazon well, and I know it's simple, but I just haven't put in the effort to doing it because, the other channels are taking up so much of my time. So it's really just a time scarcity thing.
Makes sense. And then in terms of like, again, grocery, right? It's like when you're actually there, obviously, I mean, here in Austin, it's one thing you yourself can go and do these demos, but how do you kind of make sure that when you're doing demos in other cities across the country, that they're doing a good job, that they're actually demoing and sampling in the way that you want them to?
Yeah, very valid point. I mean, I think the most strong quality in a business owner is being able to hire well. And so that comes down to, are we interviewing properly? Are we asking the right questions? And are we able to read character effectively enough? Obviously, you're never going to be 100% accurate in any of those sections, but to be able to really feel and figure out the energy of someone and what they can bring to the table is the most critical. And so just knowing the right qualities and traits to look for has made it all the difference in the world because we get really good feedback from those. And the numbers don't lie. On the times that those people demo, you'll see one person ripping through 3 or 4 cases. You'll see someone that sells 3 cans. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, for sure. It's like some people are good, some people are not as good. And to your point, like the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of your goals, right? Because we're about to wrap up Q1 here of 2025. So what are some of your other goals and objectives for the rest of this year?
Yeah, so biggest thing for us is again, continue to expand footprint. So just get more deep in the markets that we're now in, which is, continue to expand in those locations, get a better presence. Number two is launch more flavors. So we have, another flavor, possibly 2 flavors coming out by the end of the year, which, anybody that knows consumer packaged goods, you get bored of things. It's always good to have your kind of tried and true, but to constantly iterate and constantly keep things exciting. Like we all have to admit it. I mean, we have a pretty short attention span, even when it comes to flavors. So that's really big and that's on the horizon. We also have, possibly some new products coming out. We might dabble in a few different ones, just testing out in the markets that we're in. But really, it's just, let's keep validating. Let's keep ensuring that our product is going to be moving, quickly and efficiently. And then as that goes, organically build our actual reputation as a brand and kind of what we stand for and who we are. So that's big, and that should be coming out this year.
That's awesome. And then in terms of like, here as you're scaling, obviously I'm sure that there have been many challenges along the way. So what have some of your biggest challenges been for you to get to this point and get this distribution? And essentially now that you're building this momentum, but I'm sure that there have been some, bumps along the road.
Yeah, absolutely. I think beverage in particular, even really it's consumer packaged goods. CPG in general has a very big barrier to entry unless you have a ton of capital. And so what we found is there's just not much information out there for how to build these relationships, who to build them with. Like everything is sort of gate kept by the community. Again, unless you have a very large funding source, which then you can just buy your way into any location. But if you don't have that and you do have to go the route of, trying any means necessary, I don't recommend it. If you have the capital, use that because it's a lot harder to just try to, bust your way into these locations. But just the lack of knowledge of who do you reach out to? How do I get into these markets? Why am I not hearing back from anyone for 3 months? And so it's been a constant, let's iterate and figure out creative ways of getting into these locations that I think has been the biggest challenge. You can find information on, getting capital and funding and all of that you don't really think of. That seems like that would be the biggest problem, but that actually really isn't. It's how do I get an email back from, the central market buyer? I'm not giving away my secret on this podcast, but we had to use pretty creative techniques.
Makes sense. So in
Yeah,
terms of like your ideal customers, right? Because it seems like
sure.
that you mentioned earlier that, one segment is definitely busy people in tech who are taking this throughout the day. But do you see any other segments, like when you've sold this product, who is typically buying your drinks?
Yeah, I think quite a range. We see most people that are, I would say, mid 20s, early to mid 30s, people that have been on the Celsius game that, are starting to get into supplementing, are starting to get into the functional space of, hey, supplements can be more than just, caffeine and alcohol. Like there's other things out there that can have an effect on you. And so as those people start to breach that world of fitness and health, we're not a pre-workout per se, but we go hand in hand with a lot of fitness. So there's been a big like surge of run clubs, of group fitness workouts. And so with all of those things, I think you see a natural inclination towards, well, I feel like I should also be putting better things into my body. And so that really blankets a pretty large crowd of people, but it's just people that are looking to better themselves from a supplementing regimen. We're not trying to pull people that have never had a supplement before. I think you do have to be someone that's, drinking coffee or tea and interested in optimizing your body. But of that group, we have a pretty wide reach.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So obviously that you've been doing this for some time. So if you could go back in time to before you got started, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
You will be told no 1,000 times before you're told yes, and then 500 times again before you're told your second yes. But between every yes, there are fewer no's. And that's been pretty large for us in noticing that is, listen, it's never going to stop. You're going to constantly be faced with walls. But as you build momentum and as you build your book of business of, hey, listen, this is validated and what I have is worth it. And, simply your belief behind it becomes larger. You're going to see less no's in between your yeses. So I think just hang on and realize that you're going to get hit in the face 1,000 times.
100%. And yeah, like at the end of the day, ultimately product is king. And it seems like what you created is like an awesome product. So like on that note, if somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you or to find your product, do you mind sharing your website or social, just, some ways to get in contact?
Yeah, absolutely. So Instagram is Perfect Energy. So at P Perfect and then NRG, the letters NRG. Same with our website is perfectenergynrg.com. Yeah, feel free to reach out. I'll field any questions. I'm the one running and operating it still as a smaller business. Hopefully won't be that way at the end of this year, but hopefully we'll still be fielding the questions on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, Parker, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you, Dan.